He was the most underrated German marshal of World War II. He once confronted Hitler in public. He made Mustache look bad, but Hitler still praised him as the most loyal field marshal. He also held the line for 13 months at the Battle of Oljevra. With 260,000 German troops, he pushed back 2 million Soviets and made Zhukov's Operation Mars fail miserably, the only defeat the Soviet war hero ever suffered. He was the German field marshal of World War II, Hitler's fireman. Walter Model, the master of defense. Model was one of the newest of the German field marshals. Before he became famous, Manstein and Guderian were already famous. Until January 1942, Model took command of the Ninth Army. His fortunes really changed. At the beginning of 1942, the Germans lost the Battle of Moscow. Hitler did not want to withdraw his troops, so he decided to press the million-strong army on the Vyazma and Lechevre lines to force Stalin to keep his reserves in the direction of Moscow and to prepare for the summer offensive of 1942. So, Model was appointed commander of the Ninth Army for defensive operations. However, to Hitler's surprise, Model's first act after assuming command was to bring him down. Model not only asked for an additional armored army under his command, he also demanded that it be deployed in the Sev region. Hitler wanted it in the Chatsk region, so they argued bitterly about the deployment of this army. And then something unexpected happened. Model looked coldly at Hitler through his monocle, said, "My Führer, are you in command of the Ninth Army, or am I?" However, in the face of Model's contradiction, Hitler was not only not angry, but appreciated him even more. The reason for this was that Model not only fought bravely, but also carried out his orders without compromise. In the end, the Ninth Army, under Model's command, stabilized the Lecheve line. The Soviets suffered 1.77 million casualties. Even Soviet Field Marshal Zhukov's Mars offensive was repulsed by Model. This earned him the nickname Master of Defense. In the last 2 years of World War II, along with Field Marshal Schnurr, Model was known as a fireman in a critical situation. Although Model's defenses were excellent, the Soviets attacked the Germans in the area of Loos Schiffer one after the other, and the Germans were eventually exhausted. In order to reduce the number of casualties, in March 1943, Model led the Ninth Army out of Lecheve through Operation Buffalo. Except for heavy equipment losses, the Russians met little resistance. The Ninth Army withdrew to Orel. Model was awarded the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross of the Order of the Sword. After the retreat, Model was not idle for long. In July 1943, Hitler decided to launch the Battle of Kursk. He wanted to regain the initiative on the battlefield. Model led the Ninth Army with 335,000 men, 6 tank divisions, 590 tanks, and 424 guns. He fought with the Soviets in the area of Orel, north of Kursk. Although the Germans inflicted heavy losses on the Soviets at the beginning of the war, the Soviets' 3 defense armies were severely damaged. However, the Soviets were able to hold their position. The Soviets managed to hold their positions. Eventually, the Ninth Army's offensive energy was exhausted. Model was forced to switch to defense in July. On that day, British and American Allied forces also landed from Sicily, Italy. With no hope of victory, the Ninth Army was in danger of being annihilated by the Soviets. Hitler ordered the Ninth Army to withdraw from Orel. Model was dismissed by Hitler at the end of September. He was transferred to the command of the reserve forces. But in January 1944, when the Soviets broke into German positions south and southwest of Leningrad, Hitler reinstated Model. He appointed him Commander-in-Chief of Army Group North. After Model's arrival, in a very short time, he consolidated the German defenses and rescued troops threatened with encirclement and repulsed the Soviets who had broken into the rear of the line. At the end of March, due to the successive defeats of the Germans on the Eastern Front, Hitler dismissed Manstein and Kleist as Commander-in-Chief of the front and replaced them with Model and Schnurr. At the same time, Model was promoted to Field Marshal of the German Army. But by this time, the Third Reich was running out of steam. In June 1944, 2.88 million Allied troops landed in Normandy. They opened up a second front in Europe. They destroyed the German Atlantic defenses. They marched towards Germany itself. Faced with the imminent collapse of the Western Front, Hitler urgently appointed Model as the Commander-in-Chief of the Western Front in an attempt to turn the tide of the war. But the Western Front was no longer a place where determination and perseverance could make a difference. Everything here depended on the superiority of the Allied air power. Without air power, Model could only watch the Allied advance in France and Belgium. Although he had dealt a severe blow to the British airborne forces at Arnhem, but the Germans also suffered heavy losses. In December 1944, Hitler launched the Ardennes counterattack. Over the objections of Rundstedt and Model, Hitler launched the Ardennes counterattack. The operation was commanded by Model. However, due to the lack of troops, the Germans lost the war. The Allies were advancing on Germany itself. The Third Reich was in desperate straits. Hitler lost confidence in all his generals. At the beginning of 1945, it was announced that he would henceforth be in command of all German armies, and Model was transferred to Group B. By this time, his troops had been pushed back by American troops to the east bank of the Rhine and were surrounded in the Ruhr area. In the days that followed, Model sought the opportunity to die at the front. However, he was unable to do so. On April 17, 1945, the Allies captured the Ruhr. Model escaped with only 3 officers and a few men through the American lines into the nearby forest. 3 days later, Model shot himself. That was the end of a famous general. And 9 days later, Hitler shot himself in the Führer's bunker, and the Third Reich fell apart.